Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge with my co-host Speaker. How are you feeling today, Speaker?
I'm just waking up. How you going?
I'm doing well. I've been zeroed in on this Ghislaine Maxwell trial this week, which there's been really very little media coverage. No surprise there.
Oh, of course. But yeah, it seemed like something you really wanted to talk about, which is actually a really good idea because I had an idea for something else. But this one was definitely the better idea, especially this week.
Well, I figure, everybody is so hungry for information on this, and it's pretty much a media blackout on this topic. So I definitely think that it's something that people are interested in hearing about. It's current and it's really, really relevant. I mean, I'm glad we're talking about this because the people deserve to know what's going on, and it's arguably one of the most important court cases of our time. This trial,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. I mean, because of the implications that it has. I mean, you think about everything that's happening right now, in your country and in mine. When you look at the power elites who are in charge, and they clearly don't care what the people say. They clearly look like they're compromised in some way, shape, or form, whether it's by the Chinese or whether it's by something like this. We have to get to the bottom of it, of how these people are compromised and controlled. And Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were a major, major factor in that, weren't they?
Oh, 100%. 100% with the ties, the people that they interacted with, the list goes on and on, the connections that sprung out from this little elite playground because it's really what it was. I mean, these people catered to the elites.
Exactly. And this trial is not available by video like the Rittenhouse trial was and covered from, hourly, daily. Uh,
Interesting, isn't it?
yes, yes. So, but that's, I think, due to the fact that it is a federal trial, whereas Rittenhouse's was a state trial. Nevertheless, though, they do sometimes offer call-ins for these federal trials. And what's interesting in this Ghislaine Maxwell case is that they had originally said that there were going to be was going to be a call-in line for the public to listen to the audio. And then that was changed, and I believe at the request of the prosecution, which clearly makes it look as though the state is trying to hide things from the public.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. None of this
Exactly.
surprises me the way it's unfolding, the players behind it, which is what we'll get into a little bit, and just how this whole thing is dodgy from the get-go. I mean, Epstein's death already is dodgy from the get-go, for anyone that has eyes. Um, and then moving on to this, it just all seems like it started with the same brush. It all seems like it's tainted before it even began. But we will see.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm going to get into detail about some of those things that just are suspicious, really, really suspicious, that make you wonder if this is all a setup. But there is, however, a viewing room from like on the outside of the courtroom where members of the press and the public are able to watch on a video monitor. So we are getting some information, reported to us as far as what's going on in the courtroom. As for the prosecution in this case, I'm sure everybody's heard by now that it's James Comey's daughter who is the prosecutor in this case. No coincidences there. Yeah, I mean, when you have such a high profile case involving a child sex trafficking ring to compromise high profile people, including many people in politics and government and in the intelligence communities, and the prosecutors, the daughter of one of the deep state political elites. I mean, you can't help but think this trial is going to be nothing but a show, a political theater, a controlled opposition, right?
The whole thing looks like controlled opposition.
Right. Like, we're going to let some of the information get out, but really not get down to the core issue, which is this connection to the intelligence communities. And nothing really shows that more than the prosecutor's daughter. The prosecutor is the daughter of James Comey. Just really the face of deep state intelligence, right?
100%.
So about this judge, Judge Nathan, who's presiding over the trial, she's an Obama appointee. She served as counsel for both John Kerry and Obama. She's openly LGBTQ. She's just recently been appointed by Biden to a higher court, which draws into question whether or not the defense at any point will ask for her recusal if they think, say, the case isn't going their way because of conflicts of interest, right? Because, I mean, Biden could be dangling this appointment, this court appointment over, to a higher court, as a carrot. And so clearly it looks like there could be a question of conflict of interest here. But there's another tidbit about Allison Nathan that I think is noteworthy and hasn't really been reported on much. Not only does this judge clearly have ties with powerful Democrats, who no doubt had at some point ties to Maxwell and Epstein in some way, shape, or form, but she's also a member of the secret society Quill and Dagger that is based out of Cornell. And I haven't done a lot of research on Quill and Dagger, but I have done a lot of research on Skull and Bones, which the Bushes and Kerry are connected to. But from what I understand, it's Cornell's equivalent to Skull and Bones, and they all seem to have the same sort of origin. It's very Masonic in its sort of origins.
Well, it allows women apart from Skull and Bones.
Exactly.
Skull and
Yes.
Bones don't allow women. Yeah.
Right. Quill and Dagger does allow women, and one notable member, a female, is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of all people. So, but there are many, many, many powerful elites who are members of this secret society, Quill and Dagger, including former World Bank presidents, Council on Foreign Relation members, Trilateral Commission members, etc., etc. But there's one person that I found really interesting when I was reading about Quill and Dagger members, and that is Andre Balazs. And most people would read that name and maybe not recognize it, but it was a major red flag for me because if you recall, Andre Balazs is the owner of the Standard Hotel Los Angeles. So he's also a member of Quill and Dagger Secret Society. And of course, we remember digging into all of the horrific things that happened at the Standard Hotel over the years. And as it relates to this massive child sex trafficking ring used to compromise powerful elites. So you have to wonder how deeply these connections with secret societies go. With the judge Allison Nathan having all of these not only very powerful elite and Democrat ties, but also having ties to a secret society that have members of powerful elites, including this Andre Balazs, who has this connection to the Standard Hotel. So you have to, again, wonder, we have this prosecutor and a judge who have very close connections to very powerful elites that Epstein and Maxwell's child trafficking ring were used to compromise. I mean, how can anyone expect for the full truth to come out under these circumstances?
Another thing I found interesting, which might have been overlooked as well, one of the jurors on this case apparently couldn't get off work or something, and the judge herself personally made a call to one of his secretaries
Right.
to try
Yes.
to get. Now that's, to me, seems completely unheard of, as if a judge would go out of her time to try to secure a juror. It just seems very fishy to me. I'm not in the legal system whatsoever, but that does not seem to sit right with me. Why would a judge take her time just to make sure a juror is present? It's very, very strange.
Right. They do have alternates that they can substitute in those instances. It is highly unusual. I've heard commentators making note of that. Like that was kind of a little strange occurrence. In the beginning, there was this whole mix up with the jurors. One juror had a vacation scheduled over the holidays, and they actually think this trial may go through the holidays. So there was that. And then this other juror who needed more paid time off, and so the judge actually ended up calling the secretary to get that secured. So yeah, that was really sort of an interesting big first start to the first day of the trial. We're on day 3 here as we're recording. But Judge Nathan also allowed Maxwell's defense to call a so-called expert witness. And this is a so-called expert on false memories, and her name's Elizabeth Loftus. She has testified in the defense of Harvey Weinstein, O.J. Simpson, Ted Bundy, and many, many other high-profile cases on this pseudoscience, really, of false memories.
This just drags in how morally bankrupt this woman is. Look at the people that she's defended, or to try to convince. It's disgusting to me that someone like that can even be allowed inside a courtroom.
It is, and the sort of science behind it has been totally discredited. I want to point out one other case that she testified in, and this is really important and relevant to the Maxwell trial. Elizabeth Loftus testified in the McMartin preschool case, and you'll have to go back several decades and remember the McMartin preschool case is a case that is known to be connected to the CIA and the Finders. That was a case on satanic child sexual abuse of preschoolers at this preschool. So she provided testimonies, false memory testimony, expert testimony in this trial. And so of course, that's why Maxwell wanted to have her as, part of the defense's arguments, and the judge has allowed it. She hasn't testified yet. But Elizabeth Loftus has played a major role in legitimizing this now discredited foundation called the False Memory Foundation. I'm sorry, False Memory Syndrome Foundation. And this foundation was set up by a couple by the name of Freed. And the Freeds set up this foundation entirely for the purpose of discrediting the sexual abuse allegations of their own daughter. So this so-called expert Loftus was a board member at this foundation, along with several other sketchy members, including Ralph Underwager, who is supposedly this doctor again, and these false memories. And Dr. Underwager was a former Lutheran pastor who helped set up this foundation, put himself in a position to discredit victims of child sex abuse in court. And it is quoted as saying that pedophilia is an acceptable expression of God's will for love. This entire foundation was founded basically on pedophiles and pedo enablers and protectors for the purpose of covering up their acts. But they also have connections to the intelligence community, because another one of their members, Dr. Martin Orne, actually performed MK Ultra experiments using hypnosis commissioned by the CIA.
Just
So this is what the defense is going to use to try to discredit the memories of the victims, and Judge Nathan has allowed this witness.
of course, yes.
Yeah, so very, very sketchy on this whole false memory situation. But the defense is definitely going to be using three main arguments in this trial. The first is that all the victims are gold diggers. The second is that all of the victims have false or unreliable memories. And the third is that Ghislaine herself was some sort of victim. I mean, they even said in their opening arguments that ever since Adam and Eve, women have been blamed for men's evil deeds.
Oh, isn't that nice? Because women can't be evil in any way, shape, or form. It's a great way to picture it.
Right. As though Ghislaine herself is some sort of innocent bystander, but I think they're trying to appeal to some sort of remnant of the Me Too or women's empowerment or whatever.
Yeah.
And have the women jurors sympathize with Ghislaine instead of the female victims who are apparently going to be testifying.
Of course.
So here we are. It's day 3 of the trial. So far, they've had 2 witnesses, the pilot, Vysotsky, and 1 victim testify. The victim is going by a pseudonym of the name Jane. And so far, it appears that the prosecution has done a really terrible job. I mean, reading their line of questioning, it really seems to go nowhere. It seems to be very benign, instead of getting to most of the nitty gritty. And in most cases, there have been a couple of like aha moments, but not really much. And because there's so many bombshells. I mean, this is the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, right? So many different questions that I would have been asking other than the ones that they were asking.
Of course.
But so, and really the direct examinations that the prosecution has done of their own witnesses appeared to be about half the amount of time, like say 25 minutes to at least an hour or more on the cross-examination defense side. So it just doesn't seem like the prosecution is really putting it into full gear. Right? Like they're not trying, like they're trying to throw this. So some key points about the testimony so far. The pilot Vysotsky, here's Vysotsky here. He testified that not only did he fly the Epstein and the elites and the young girls around, but also he mentioned that he installed surveillance systems, cameras, audio systems in some of these homes, I believe Zorro Ranch, as well as the Manhattan home. So that was an interesting tidbit to know that Vysotsky, the pilot, was actually the one installing this equipment. Like, okay. So he had to be aware that they were, taking videos and audio and things like that, right? Vysotsky did acknowledge some high-profile names. Most all were people that I had heard of before, Les Wexner, Ava Anderson Dubin, Bill Clinton, Itzhak Perlman, Prince Andrew, and of course, Trump, right? Of course, they're going to throw Trump in there, but it appears the defense keeps bringing up Trump on purpose. They're establishing something here because they keep bringing up Trump. And as opposed to, say, Clinton. And we know from records, Trump flew on the plane one time. We have record of it one time from Palm Beach to Newark, I believe. And Bill Clinton, 25, 27 times, right, that he flew on the plane. And we have photos and everything with Bill Clinton, with the young girls and all of that kind of thing. So Kevin Spacey's name was brought up as well. So but it definitely seems like the defense is using this Trump line of questioning more and more. Maybe they're trying to say, look, Visosky, you never saw anything, right, with these girls. No, I never saw anything happen, nothing sexual, right? And nothing sexual happened when Trump flew on the plane, right? So maybe that's supposed to equate like that nothing ever happened, right? Like none of these flights there was nothing, no sexual activity going on any of these flights. I don't know where they're going with this or what they're trying to do other than try to highlight Trump in this trial. So Visosky did testify that he really didn't see anything, and he didn't keep good records on who was on the planes, but nobody believes that. Do you believe that?
No, of course not.
Nah. You have to keep in mind here that Visosky got 40 acres of New Mexico land from Epstein. Epstein paid for 2 of his daughters' college tuitions, and one of his daughters got married at Zorro Ranch. So this was way more than just, him being a pilot for Epstein. Visosky was really intimately involved here, and it appears to have looked like he was looking the other way or involved in the child sex trafficking operation. In fact, at one point, the prosecutor kind of implied that by asking him straight up if he allowed his 14-year-old daughter massage Epstein, to which he denied. But I think that there was some sort of reading between the lines there, an implication. I'm not sure, but of course, that's something that I'm wondering myself. And then the second witness to testify is Jane. That's not her real name. That's, the pseudonym she's going by. She's an actress in LA. She met Epstein when she was 14. Apparently her dad was a composer who had died. And when he died, their family went into some serious financial hardship. And that was around the time that she met Epstein and Maxwell, who had lured her at the performing arts school that she went to, where he had some sort of cabin or lodging there, because it was like a performing arts camp where she went. And her testimony has gone on it was pretty much most of day 2, and we're on day 3. She's still testifying. So it's been some time that she's been, on the stand, and she's testified in detail about the sexual activity, starting at when she was 14 and the numerous places where she went and flew and that sort of a thing. And it's been pretty damning because in her testimony, Maxwell was present a lot of the time. And she talked about sort of, orgy situations where Maxwell and Epstein and her were involved. So her testimony clearly laid out how integral Maxwell's role was in this whole thing. It wasn't like it was just Epstein. Maxwell was very integrally involved in recruiting and actually conducting the sex abuse.
She clearly was the madam in this case. But of course, false memories.
Right. Yeah. And on cross-examination, I'll have to tell you, because that's what they're going for. They keep asking a lot of details. This is stuff when she was like 14, 15, 16 years old. And, a couple, 3 decades ago nearly, right? So these details that they keep asking her, I think they're kind of gotcha questions where she has to answer, I don't recall. And I think they're clearly trying to set up a false memory argument for her. Like if she doesn't recall this memory, then how accurate is that memory? And that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then they keep asking her questions about her financial situation at the time, which I just explained. And clearly they're trying to establish a motive of as far as her being some sort of gold digger, which she was actually involved in a civil suit against Epstein's trust last year. And she was awarded, I believe it was like 5 million, to which she got like 2.5 or something million from. So they're trying to set her up as some sort of gold digger who doesn't really have clear memories. But
Yeah.
her testimony has been really damning. And so, if the prosecution doesn't screw this up too much, I still think that, we could see some, the jury go for, prosecuting, and convicting Ghislaine. It's just so many things stacked up against this being a fair trial.
Oh,
And
well, it's looking like it hasn't been a fair trial from the get-go, but there is going to be a lot of twists and turns here, and we're just going to have to keep an eye on it, watch it.
right. Yeah. So the trial's expected to go through the holidays. That's what they were at least talking about when they were selecting the jury, and they had that kind of mix up in the beginning on day one. So we've got some time here to keep an eye on this. And if anybody is kind of wanting to know details minute by minute, day by day, this is a great account to follow. His name is Matthew Russell Lee for Inner City Press. He's got a website, innercitypress.com, but he's live tweeting out the actual words being said in the courtroom because he's in the courtroom. So yeah, we're getting some good information from him. So at Inner City Press is a good account to follow on Twitter. But another thing to note is that there are 3 million pages of evidence in this case. And so a lot of people are wondering, do you think flight logs? And yes, I heard flight logs are part of that. So of course we're wondering, how are we going to get some more names? And I guess that remains to be seen. A lot of this case so far, what we're seeing is just hearing a lot about these disgusting sex acts that Ghislaine and Epstein were involved with this first witness. But we'll have to see if some more comes out about the other names on those flight logs. And, one thing that I don't think we are going to hear much about, probably not at all about, is this connection to the intelligence community. You cannot talk about Ghislaine and Epstein without acknowledging that this was a sex trafficking ring used to compromise elite pedophiles in order to control them. And the community is behind this. I mean, there's Ghislaine's father was connected to Mossad, MI5, CIA. There's all of these connections to the intelligence community, which I doubt we're going to get to the bottom of in this trial. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they'll try to steer clear from that as much as possible on both sides, which is a shame. But
right, which gets to the why would the prosecutor be the daughter of James Comey? Well, this is like controlled opposition. We're going to let out some information, but not. We're not going to bring down the whole cabal because there's too many people involved, and Yeah. So, I mean, what about the videotapes that were confiscated at Epstein's New York penthouse? I don't know if those are part of the evidence that will be entered in this case, but we know that there were tapes of young girls, and undoubtedly those were young girls who were with powerful people on tape for the purposes of blackmailing these powerful people to do what they want. So I don't know if those are going to come out, But when going back to what I said at the start was, you think about everything that's going on right now, whether it's from COVID and lockdowns and, new variants and mandates and, all of these decisions that seem to be made just lawlessly, where there's a huge public outcry. This has nothing to do with our health and safety. This has nothing to do with what the people want, but the politicians just seem to keep going with it. You have to wonder how many of these politicians are compromised, right? And whether or not it's because their pockets are getting lined by the CCP, or whether or not it's by something like this.
I think the better question is what politician is not compromised. I think that's the harder one.
I agree. And you can pretty much tell which ones are and which ones aren't by the way that they act. I mean, if they're towing the line, if they never go against the narrative, then that there's something being held over them, whether it has to do in some ways connected to this Epstein-Maxwell case, or it's something else. But there's something being held over them. And you're right. The ones that go against the grain, few and far between, but you can tell them because they stick out by a sore thumb, like a sore thumb, and they're attacked.
Yeah, true.
But also something notable, since the trial started, there's been a number of resignations, and people are wondering, okay, are these connected somehow to the case? And of course, there was the Jack Dorsey resignation from Twitter this week, and some other ones, I believe, like Walmart, and I can't remember the others, but several notable resignations, and people are like, were these people somehow, connected to this child sex trafficking ring? But this one here I found really interesting as well. The chief coroner who declared after Epstein's autopsy that it was a suicide, she resigned literally on the day the trial began. So that seems fishy, don't you think?
Well, she's got a cozy retirement island there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, very, very interesting there. So also, and I kind of hesitate to bring this up because I'm not sure if it's related or not, but this fashion designer, Virgil Abloh, he passed away apparently from cancer this week, just before the trial began. And it is worth noting, I suppose, that there was a case. This is not the same case. This was a case that was brought last year by these plaintiffs, and with a number of defendants, including the first one being Epstein's trust, Harvey Weinstein being the second one, many, many others, high-profile people in Hollywood and so forth. But Virgil Abloh was listed as a defendant in this case, and this case actually was dropped, so nothing came of it. But it is sort of interesting. I mean, when you have such a high profile case like Epstein, and we all know what happened to Epstein, right? We're talking about incredibly powerful people who have been compromised to the point where it's quite possible that if anything's exposed, then they could be suicided, right?
100%.
Yeah, so you have to question resignations or deaths, curious deaths, whenever it comes to a case like this, don't you?
Yeah, true.
All right, so definitely keep an eye out if you want some more information on this case on at Inner City Press for more updates. And I'll be over on Gab keeping people posted, and I'll probably give updates on Dig It. But I think this trial is going to drag out a little while.
Oh, definitely. And every if there's massive major point or something like that, we might even make another video on it, just to keep you up to date at least. So
There you go. Well, I think that about does it for this one. So thanks guys for joining us here today on Hive Mind. We are on YouTube, BitChute, Foxhole, and Pilled. Please be sure to share this, and we'll see you back next time right here on Hive Mind.